Hi all, welcome to the pre-reading for I'm a Mad Dog Biting Myself for Sympathy. I don't have my camera on, so there's no video of me. You'll just be seeing the text here. So the pre-reading is here so that I can walk you through some of the issues that you might have in trying to understand what's going on with this story, and I'll try and do this for a number of the stories that we read. So I've got here the opening part of the story here. It says Louise Erdrich is the name of the author, born in 1954. Just to give you a sense of, her age there. And as it says, her fiction treats the lives of Native Americans. Characters appear and reappear in various novels and short stories living around North Dakota, right? She is part Chippewa, which is a Native American tribe. And as it says, she melds Native American traditions with European traditions in her fiction. And this story, for example, the narrator's adventure parallels the quest motif of chivalric literature. And what she's meaning by that is that we've got in a certain kind of tradition, there are stories in which, like a knight goes on a quest, right? We understand that kind of a story, and we have something like that here, except it's potentially a very different kind of a quest. So going down to the story itself, the title is called I'm a Mad Dog Biting Myself for Sympathy. So we should be able to recognize from the discussions that we have had earlier in class that this is a metaphor, right? We would imagine this person isn't literally a mad dog. It's a metaphor. We could, of course, turn this into a simile by saying, I'm like, or I feel like a mad dog biting myself for sympathy. That would be a simile, and then we would understand more clearly that it's a comparison. And that's how that works. Metaphors, sometimes it's hard to recognize that there are metaphors because we don't explicitly state it. Whereas with a simile, I'm like a mad dog biting myself for sympathy. That word like lets you know that we're making some kind of a comparison. So he feels like, this character, for whatever reasons, feels like he's a mad dog biting myself for sympathy. And so we might ask what that means, to feel like you're mad like a crazy dog, and that would be a crazy thing if you bite yourself, if you harm yourself, injure yourself, just so somebody can feel sympathy for you. And you always want to pay attention to titles. Titles tell us a great deal about what's going to be going on. The author chooses the title for a very specific reason, and so even if you don't understand exactly what the title means at this point, kind of hold it in your head, kind of file it away, and as you're reading the rest of the story, think about how that title fits in with some of the other things that we're going to see. So we then get our first sentence. Who I am is just the habit of what I always was, and who I'll be is the result. That sentence, actually, I'm going to ask you to write about for your assignment on this. So I'm not going to go over that because I want you to think about what that means, and it may make more sense by the time we get to the end of the piece. But I want you to think about what that means. What it means that we are the habit of what we have always been. At least this person says, who I am is the habit of what I always was. Who I'll be in the future as a result? What does that mean? And so I'll let you sort that out on your own. But then we get to the next sentence. This comes clear to me at the wrong time. So that previous sentence, the idea that I'm just the habit of what I always was, comes clear to me at the wrong time. What time is that? Well, I'm standing in a line almost rehabilitated. And so that word rehabilitated is kind of interesting because it could mean a number of things. When you read that, you might think physical rehabilitation, right? That is, sometimes people have an injury and they have to go to a rehab center, right? Where they're going to, they break their leg and they have to go someplace where they're going to learn how to walk again. So it could be something like that kind of rehabilitation. We also have rehabilitation for people who are going to be addicted to drugs or alcohol. We call that a rehab center. So maybe it could be that. But in any case, the idea of being rehabilitated is that we've got some kind of a problem and we're trying to fix that problem. So either it's a physical problem or some kind of a mental problem. What is it that we mean to be rehabilitated? Is it one of the ones that we just came up with, or is it something else? We don't know yet, but that's okay. Just because you don't know right now doesn't mean that you won't know later. And so what you want to do is kind of hold that in mind as you go through the rest of the story. So keep that word rehabilitated in mind as we go through. And then it says Walgreens is the store in downtown Fargo. We know what a Walgreens is. It's a drugstore. Downtown Fargo. Fargo is a town in North Dakota. Very northern part of the United States, very cold out there. And so that's where this takes place. He's in a Walgreens in line at a Walgreens, presumably buying something. I have my purchase in my arms, so he is buying something. And I'm listening to canned carols on the loudspeaker. Carols, we know that word, but we may not recognize it in this context as easily. Carols, of course, are Christmas songs. And canned means that they are going to be the ones that are playing on a recording. That's just a phrase that some people use to mean recorded. So I'm listening to canned carols, canned Christmas carols, which tells us the time period, right? This must be Christmas time. So I'm listening to canned carols in the loudspeaker. He's in a Walgreens in a drugstore listening to the Christmas carols, so it must be around Christmas time. And then he says, I plan to buy this huge stuffed parrot with purple wings and a yellow beak. Right, so he plans to buy this thing. That's what he's standing in line for. And then he says, really, it's a toucan. I get told this later in the tank. So a toucan is a different kind of bird. That's the bird on the box of Fruit Loops, actually. It's a real bird that lives in South America. So he gets told, he says that it's not really a parrot, it's a toucan. And he says, I get told this later in the tank. The tank is a slang term, an older slang term that we have for prison. So we're like, well, wait a minute. So prison, I get told this later in the tank. So is this guy going to end up in prison? Maybe that has something to do with this word rehabilitated that we had there. So we may not have understood what that rehabilitated meant when it first came up, but by the time we get down here, we're thinking, maybe rehabilitated, he had led a criminal life and he thought he was almost rehabilitated. He thought he was going to be better. He wasn't going to engage in any more criminal activity, but he's going to end up in the tank later on. He's going to end up in prison. So maybe maybe he isn't rehabilitated. So that almost rehabilitated might make some sense there. So again, kind of file that away. Realize that our authors are always trying to tell us things. Sometimes students believe that the authors are trying to hide things from us. They're trying to make things difficult for us to understand them, but actually they want us to understand them. And so they're providing these clues, but sometimes we just need to be patient about picking them up. So let's go to the next paragraph. Sorry, my box is off here. Hold on, let me pause for a second. Sorry about that. I can't change where the what you can see while I'm recording. So here we are on the next paragraph, and he says, you think you know everything about yourself. How much money it would take, for instance, to make you take it. To take what? Well, we were just talking about that before, about the toucan, about the stuffed bird. You think you know everything about yourself. How much money it would take, for instance, to make you take it? Well, we just found out that he is going to get told something later on in the tank that is in prison. So take it. Is he going to steal this? How you would react when caught? When caught, well, that suggests that he is going to steal it. But watch out, I'm sorry for this, but when these got scanned, the computer kind of switched some of the letters around. So that should be B-U-T, but instead of the B-N-T. But then you find yourself walking out that should be the door, with a stuffed toucan, not a roocan, a toucan, just to see if shit happens, if doo-doo occurs, right? So you find yourself walking out the door with a stuffed toucan, so that suggests that he is stealing it, right? He's walking out the door with that. And he says, why does he do that? Just to see if shit happens, right? If doo-doo occurs, right? So it's interesting that he's, as we said, he's almost rehabilitated. Seems like he's somebody who has engaged in criminal activity, but then he's going, and he's almost better. He's standing in line, like he's going to buy this toucan, but then he walks out, as we say, just to see if shit happens. And what does that mean for as a person, that he's going to walk out just to see what's going to happen to him? That's a bizarre thing. Sometimes we might think that people steal things for money, right? For a lot of money, but he's just stealing a stuffed animal. And it's not even for the money, it's because just to see what happens. And then he says, and it does, that is, shit happens, it does, though no one stops me right at first. So something is going to happen, though he doesn't get stopped as he leaves. And then he says in here, my motive is my girlfriend's Christmas present. And it is strange because I do have the money to pay for a present, though nothing very big or elaborate. So he could buy this, right? And so we have to think about why he's stealing this bird if he could afford it. And then he says, I think of Dawn the minute I see the bird and wish I'd won it for her at a county fair, though we never went to a fair. I see myself throwing a half-dozen softballs and hitting every wooden milk jug, or maybe tossing rings. But those things are weighted or loaded wrong, and that's another reason I never could have won this toucan for Dawn, because the whole thing's a cheat in general. So what the hell, I think, and lift the bird. So he wants to get this bird for his girlfriend, but it says that he wishes he had won it for her, as it says, at a county fair. I see myself throwing a half-dozen softballs and hitting every wooden milk jug. So playing some of those games that you might play at a carnival. And he says, but those things are weighted or loaded wrong. And if we don't know, you should know that all of those things are rigged, and that's what he means, that all those carnival games are made so that you can't win them very easily. If you try to play the basketball game, the basketball hoop has been bent so that it's really narrow and it's hard for that basketball to go through, because they don't want you to keep winning the stuffed animals. So he says, but those things are weighted or loaded wrong, and that's another reason I never could have won this toucan for Dawn, because the whole thing's a cheat in general. So what the hell, I think, and lift the bird. So it tells you something about how he thinks about himself. He's feeling kind of sorry for himself. He feels that he doesn't necessarily have much power, and so he does what he can do, potentially, and steals this bird. Lifting means stealing. Then he gets outside. He steals the bird, and he goes outside, and he says, outside in the street is one of my favorite kind of days. So this is going to tell us a lot about the kind of person that he is. We can see what his favorite kind of day is. Right there in the drag middle of winter, when the snow is a few hard gray clumps and the dusty grass shows on the boulevard. I like the smell in the air, the dry dirt, the patches of water shrinking, and the threat of snow too in the gloom of the sky. And so it says something about him, that his favorite kind of day is there in winter. It's not a nice warm spring day. But fair enough, maybe we do like a nice winter day. But his winter day is not the winter day where the snow is just falling and the whole world is white and quiet. No, he likes this snow as a few hard gray clumps. That doesn't sound very pretty. And the dusty grass shows on the boulevards. Again, not very pretty. Says, I like the smell in the air, the dry dirt. Who likes that? Just the dry dirt, the patches of water shrinking, and the threat of snow too, in the gloom of the sky. So he likes the gloom of the sky. So that tells us something about him. He doesn't seem to be very positive. And we've kind of seen that from the previous paragraph, right? Where he's going to say that everything is weighted or loaded wrong, right? The whole thing's a cheat in general. So that's what, and so he says, what the hell, I steal the bird. And this paragraph kind of backs that up some. So, as you're going through, this is just those first couple of paragraphs, as you're going through the story, then keep some of these ideas in mind. Now that we know something about him, we understand something about the situation, hopefully the rest of the story will make a bit more sense. So go through, read the rest of the story, and respond to the questions, and then we'll have the discussion on Blackboard as well.